Hello, everybody. It's me, Albatross. I just want to let you know, no, I'm not finished picking apart all the different people in the last 4 years who have contributed to the trafficking of children in this country. I just wanted to take a little break from that and talk a little bit about the backbone of MK Ultra, like how it's fueled, how it's enabled, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, from my personal experiences. Like, this doesn't mean I'm right in any way. I'm just providing this from my own point of view on how this has been able to go on for so long. And I have several. It's first of all, it's layered. There's lots of different reasons why, but it's all still connected to each other. And I have some scientific journals and also news articles I wanted to share with you today. Some from 20 years ago, some from a few months ago, and some from in between. So, and then you guys can make up your minds for yourselves. And everything I put in here, all the way up until the very end of this presentation, literally is coming from these journals, these news articles. I wanted to be as objective about this as possible, considering that this is something that has affects probably virtually every single person in this country in one form or the other, myself included. So this is a personal issue for everybody, so that's why I wanted to approach it as objectively as possible, because it's very easy to get personal about things like this, being that most people are on medications coming from one of these big pharma organizations. And I wanted to share, it's not a coincidence that these are all billion dollar industries, and there's multiple ones, there's so many of them, of these pharmaceutical companies. There's just so many of them. And some I've never even heard of. But, they're all super wealthy, super successful. Their profits have just shot up, with the exception of maybe Purdue. But we're going to get into that in a little bit. Why they were pretty much the sacrificial lamb. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. They totally did. But, let's not pretend that all these other pharmaceutical industries did not do the exact same thing they were doing. And to be totally honest, maybe, I'm just saying, maybe Purdue learned it from them. But anywho, I'm going to get off that soapbox for a moment. Because this is something that affects all children. All children. Not just foster children, but children that have loving parents, too. This affects every child in America. Horribly bad. And it's only just now that we're starting to realize how bad, because that generation of overly medicated children, that generation, from the late 80s to early 90s, they're growing up now and speaking about it, talking about it. I mean, there's a reason why there are so many more problems with drugs than there's ever been. This, in my opinion, was all planned by these people. Because think about it. It works kind of the same way with war. You create a problem. You make money from that conflict. From the whole conflict, right? Then you, bam, all of a sudden out of nowhere come up with a solution to that problem. Whether, be medication, like in the pharmaceutical, big pharma case, they come up with a medication or a cure for the problem they most likely started. And then, with the addiction crisis, they definitely started that. Nobody better pretend about that for a moment. Kind of works the same way with war, these weapons companies, the shareholders that own them are the same ones that own stock in construction and things like that. So you know what I mean? They benefit both from the problem and the solution. In fact, the solution, once they get done with that, they benefited twice as much than if it never happened to begin with. You see what I'm saying? See how that works? But I mean, they have to have the government's help, though. Let's all be honest about that, too. They can't just do this solely on their own. They have to have, like, help from the government, from the inside. They have to have gotten away with it. I mean, they've still gotten away with it. They have still gotten away with it. Purdue may have taken the fall for all the rest of them, but all the rest of them got away with it, and they're still implementing this design in different areas of life. Like, just one example before we get into all these articles. Just one example. Just recently, it's come out that Abbott Lab, their toddler milk is a big problem. They came out with this toddler milk. It's a milk that you give to toddlers when they come off of the baby formula instead of just regular cow's milk. And it is loaded with sugar. It is super sweet. And the problem with this toddler milk is that it makes it so that regular milk and things like regular water, they're disgusting because they're so used to sweets. You know what I mean? They did with the baby formula. Then they just did the next step with the toddler milk to really get that addiction to sugar going at a very, very, very young age. And they trick parents. They literally put on their labels that it's just as good for you as regular cow's milk, that it could replace it. That's the problem. That's the problem. Now, there have been some lawsuits about it, and not just that. Abbott has been the center of controversy the last year or two. The toddler milk was just one thing. The other thing was the baby formula they came up with for prematurely born infants, and that it was causing a lot of problems for premature born babies. And you know what Abbott's argument was? Well, we just needed to come up with a solution because women aren't producing enough breast milk anymore. Instead of just coming up with a solution for the lack of breast milk. So, their argument is it's the mom's fault. They can't produce enough milk, so we gotta make a supplement. And they are right about that. It is true that women these days have been producing a lot less breast milk. But they would rather just, put a Band-Aid on it and make a supplement. And doesn't that seem to be the common denominator in a lot of these, like, global issues, these world issues? They never ever want to address the root cause of any problem. It's just like, let's put a Band-Aid on it. Let's prescribe a pill. Let's, just build more prisons, make more money. Like, no one ever wants to ever look at the root cause of these problems. And something interesting too. About 10 years back, when I was in college for biology, and every so often, I don't know what the time frame is, but every so often, every few years or so, the requirements change for certain degrees, like, science, health. I mean, it's common, things get updated, things change. But one of these changes occurred while I was in school, because it had been like the requirement for the particular degree I was going after. It was a requirement to take nutrition. And then it was the very next year when the change happened, the nutrition and the physical education requirements were taken off altogether. Completely. And at the time, I didn't complain about it. I thought, whatever. One less class I got to worry about, because it happened that the one that they added, I had already taken. So, it had worked out for me. But thinking back on it, it's why would you do that? That's a very big part of, especially the degree I was working on, it seemed to, or any science, really, when you're dealing with things like that, especially biochemistry and things like that, you would think that would be an important, I don't know. But it was odd, I thought. It was odd. It's they stopped wanting to address the root causes, all the horrible toxins in our food and things like that. And I'm not saying that is the root cause. I'm just saying, I feel like they should try to work to figure it out, why women aren't producing enough breast milk. I mean, yeah, you got to make a supplement too, but Like, stop gaslighting. Like, don't make a supplement that is toxic. We got some good science these days. I mean, instead of arguing and saying, oh, we have no plans on stopping production of this particular formula, we'll come up with a better one. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent. I can't help it. There's just been so much going on lately, and it's really gotten to my soul. Anyways, let's get into this. Here's one of the problems that we run into as far as the health industry, the health field goes, is that there are huge conflicts of interest in these textbooks they use in medical schools. Huge conflicts of interest. And the thing is, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of something called a kickback or things like that. That's basically what happens when doctors in the medical field have incentives to prescribe medications, certain medications. And it can be in the form of money or gifts or concert tickets, or it can be in any form. A kickback is a kickback. You're getting something in return for making the pharmaceutical company money. Okay? Well, the way it works with these textbooks, a lot of these colleges and these textbooks are written, like the authors of the textbooks have been getting paid, have been getting kickbacks for writing about certain medications that would be helpful and putting them in like a better light than others. Certain, not even just medications, but like medical devices, technology, whatever. Like the author was getting paid by these companies to shed it in the best light, favorable light, to make doctors who are reading these textbooks, you see what I'm saying? And that's just the beginning of it. These medical school textbooks are a huge problem. That's why I don't necessarily want to come on here and attack doctors. I mean, I will if they accept kickbacks. But, let's take the ones that are ethical and who don't take kickbacks. Who are coming into this field with the best of intentions to save lives. They're still learning from these textbooks. So even if they're not getting kickbacks for what they prescribe or what medical devices they use, the author of the foundation of their education received the kickback already. You see what I mean? See how it works? How they slip it in there? Well, the issue comes now is that they're not disclosing that they were getting paid. Like the biomedical textbook authors didn't disclose what they were getting paid. Let me go back real quick. I want to show you the date this was done. It wasn't that long. Well, I mean, it's a little outdated as far as science goes, but not really, because I think it still happens as far as last I checked. But, 2019 when it was available, and it was written in 2018. So, just like 1 or 2 years right before COVID. And keep in mind, this is a government article, too. This is a government article. I can't remember who was the director of the Health and Human Services. This would have been in 2018, 2019. This would have been during the Trump administration. So I can't, forgive me, I can't remember who it was then. But anywho, it was by them. It was their doctors, their scientists who did this, and it's quite a few of them. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different scientists from several different schools and stuff. And yeah, they said that, okay, textbooks are a formative resource for healthcare providers during their education and are also an enduring reference. So not only during their education, it's also used for a reference for treatment. Because, they can't memorize their whole textbooks. You know what I mean? They still got to reference it every once in a while. And the authors of these textbooks, like it says, The objective of the study was to find out if the authors were getting paid, and if they were disclosing it. And let's read the conclusion. An appreciable subset of biomedical authors have patents and have received remuneration from a medical product companies, and this information is not disclosed to readers. These findings indicate that full transparency of financial potential conflicts of interest should become a standard practice among the authors of the biomedical educational materials. Now, if they do, to be honest, if they do, after this article, I don't know. I don't know if there was anyone who took any additional steps to address this or not. Hopefully. But yeah, and then on March 6, 2018, this comes out from a watchdog from one of these agencies. Authors of premier medical textbooks didn't disclose $11 million in industry payments. Meaning the medical industry, whether it be big pharma or those medical tech device companies, were giving them, the authors, millions of dollars in payments, and they were not disclosing it. So, that was just one issue I wanted to talk about. Here's another issue I want to talk about. About 6 months later, this article comes out. Thousands of foster children may be getting psychiatric drugs without safeguards, watchdog agency says. It was reported by the Associated Press. And this really shouldn't be any big surprise. At this point, we already knew that they were experimenting HIV medications on foster kids. So, it shouldn't have been a big surprise. If they did it back then, they did it here. I mean, they probably did it all in between. I mean, because there aren't measures being taken about this, because why? Because these foster kids don't have anyone but the government to advocate for them. It's horrible what they are doing. So, the same Inspector General's office that had exposed 6 months earlier the huge financial incentives of biomedical authors, 6 months later they expose that a lot of these medications are just being tested on foster kids. And in fact, a report says that 1 in 3 foster kids from a sample of states were prescribed psychiatric drugs without treatment plans or follow-up, standard steps in sound medical care. So they were not only were they just treated like guinea pigs, they weren't even given standard procedure and follow-up or nothing. Just like they did during MK Ultra. I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason it makes it connected. I'm just saying, it's our government, once again, treating human beings like guinea pigs. See, back then they were getting all mad because they were doing it without consent on, adults and kids back then. Now they're just doing, in my opinion, uninformed consent on kids alone that don't have parents to advocate for them. I mean, maybe the kids that, volunteered to do it. But, they're still kids. So, in what world are we giving them the say over their own... You know what I mean? That doesn't fly with any other child. Why does it fly with them? It's horrible. It is horrible. And I'm sure this was back in 2018. I'm sure it only got worse once the government literally started funding the child trafficking industry. I'm sure it only got worse. So not only are the statistics high among kids in general and foster kids, if you just look at the group of foster kids and compare them to kids that aren't in foster care. The statistics show from 2010 that psychiatric drug use among youth in foster care are much higher, about 13% to 52%, than among youth overall, which is about 4%. That is a huge difference. That even if you factor into the... It's a huge difference. Even when you factor in the fact that some of these kids might be troubled. And that's kind of a weird assumption to make. I mean, some of these kids, like, you don't know what they got going on. You know what I mean? And it's just, they're being treated like guinea pigs. No one knows if these medications will work or if they're safe. But, you know, no one ever wants to talk about it. Also, according to this article, Medicaid spends hundreds of millions of dollars annually on psychiatric drugs. Wow, that sounds like a pretty big incentive to me. Nationally, it's been estimated that about 120,000 children in foster care take at least one such medication. That's a lot. That's a lot of kids. Well, let's see if any changes have been made. Let's look. This 2024. Let's read. Victims and survivors of abused and neglected youth at residential treatment facilities and advocates at a news conference Wednesday on Capitol Hill about the need for Congress to act to protect children and reform such facilities. Or just get rid of them altogether. This is back in June 12th, 2024. Children in residential treatment facilities run by some of the country's largest behavioral health companies are at risk for sexual abuse, dangerous physical restraints, and over-medication. Problems compounded by weak oversight and a system that optimizes profit over the well-being and safety of children, a Senate committee reported on Wednesday. The companies that were investigated rely on per diem payments from Medicaid. That means these companies get paid per child. So they benefit a lot more. The more children that are in these facilities, the more they get paid. And other government sources to treat the young people in their custody, many of whom have developmental disabilities or are in foster care. But the companies often pack the facilities to capacity and regularly fail to hire adequate numbers of qualified staff, the report found. Those flaws are endemic to the operating model of the companies, which treat children as payouts, the report says. And all those kids there were there to testify to that. And if we all remember correctly, this was the same time period when everyone was just like so obsessed with P. Diddy and all of that this just kind of got forgotten about. The report found rampant civil rights violations, including the overuse of seclusion, so like overuse of like isolating them, children, and of chemical restraints, injections, intended to keep children calm, even when they were already relaxed or cooperative. So it was like they were treating it like a rehab facility, like those that's worth a whole video on its own. Those drug rehabilitation centers, because it's basically people who go there to come off of drugs just get pumped with these other drugs that turn them into zombies. Anyway, but I'm not going to get into that. But that's basically the same thing that they're doing here. To keep them calm, they're just giving them these medications and secluding them and abusing them. American tax dollars are funding this, our investigators found. Senator Ron Wyden, the Democrat representative of Oregon, chair of the committee, said at the start of the hearing, in some cases, these facilities receive over $1,200 per day per child from the Medicaid program. The experiences and trauma these kids are left with read something like a horror novel. And you know what? They ought to give every dime that Medicaid gave them to those kids. They should. They really should. For what they went through. Every freaking dime. Okay. Let's go back 20 years ago. Do we all remember what was going on between 2004, 2005 time period? Well, there was certainly a lot of distractions. I will say that around this time period. A lot of distractions. But it was also the time period when the Oxycontin machine, was at its peak. And when I say peak, I don't mean when I say peak, I mean it was pumping out so much Oxycontin at this point. It was just pumping it out, writing prescriptions like it was nothing. This time period. Okay. August 19th, 2005. Big Pharma and American Psychiatry. The good, the bad, the ugly. The interests of Big Pharma in psychiatry, however, they before this part, they were talking about all the good things Big Pharma did, and I'll link this article if you want to go read it. I didn't really feel like reading through that because it does not equate to be worth all this. The practice of psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry have different goals and abide by different ethics. Big Pharma is a business governed by the motive of selling products and making money. The profession of psychiatry aims to provide the highest quality of psychiatric care to persons who suffer from psychiatric conditions. There is widespread concern of the over-medicalization, I'm assuming they mean the over-prescribing of medication, of mental disorders, and the overuse of medications. Or maybe they do mean it like that, okay? The over-medicalization, meaning they're making psychiatry more about physical than mental. I'm assuming is what they mean. Financial incentives and managed care have contributed to the notion of a, quote, quick fix, which is exactly what I was just talking about. That's exactly what I was just talking about. By taking a pill and reducing the emphasis on psychotherapy and psychosocial treatments. There is much evidence that there is less psychotherapy provided by psychiatrists than 10 years ago. Remember, this is 2005. So as of 2005, they were doing much less psychotherapy, a lot more medicating. This is true despite the strong evidence base that many psychotherapies are effective used alone or in combination with medications. In my last column, I shared with you my experience in APAs in responding to the anti-psychiatry remarks that Tom Cruise, I remember that, when Tom Cruise was going against him. Now, I don't agree with anything of what he said, but he did make a very good point. I do not agree with any, please don't twist it, because he was acting like a psycho. He was really being judgmental and mean to people with mental health issues. However, but the comment he made about, where it says here, okay, one of the charges Tom Cruise says about him is against psychiatry is that many patients are being prescribed the wrong drugs or drugs they don't need. And I do agree with that. He was right about that. He might have been wrong, but everything else that came out of his mouth was total crap. But that was correct. Which kind of makes me mad because then it kind of takes away from this point that is very true. Now, according to this article, these charges are true, but it's not psychiatry's fault. Unless they were taking kickbacks. Let's be clear. It is the fault of the broken healthcare system that the United States appears to be willing to endure. Okay, so yeah, let's just blame it on everybody else. As we address these big pharma issues, we must examine the fact that as a profession, we have allowed the biopsychosocial model to become the bio model. In a time of economic restraint, a pill and an appointment has dominated treatment. We must work hard to end this situation and get involved in advocacy to reform our healthcare system from the bottom up. Did they do this? I don't know. This was back in 2005. You tell me. But yeah, you guys can go ahead and read this. I will read the second paragraph though. Direct marketing to consumers also leads to increased demand for medication and inflates expectations about the benefits of the medications. And they were just talking about this in the news because talking about how they shouldn't be allowed to make commercials. I fully 100% back that up. Absolutely. Absolutely. They should not be pushing medicine on the TV. No. They shouldn't. And also another thing that's interesting, which is why I can't wait for them to look into Medicaid. Another thing that's very interesting about Medicaid is that in some cases, right? In some cases, people have told me that like their Medicaid will cover generic medicines, but then in some cases they won't. And then they gotta like they'll only cover the brand name medication. So then they gotta run all over the place to find their medicine. And for those of you who don't know, the way medicine works is like when a new medicine comes out, the company that comes up with the medication has a patent for it. Depending on the medication, they last different amounts of times. Some of them can last a couple years, some of them can last 10 years. But when the patent expires, then other companies can make generic versions of that. And making cheaper versions of the exact same medication. So pharmacies, these brand name medications are super expensive. So when the generics come out, a lot of them stop getting the brand name because they're so expensive. And it's just odd why Medicaid was only allowed to pay for it if it was a brand name. That's odd, right? It almost sounded kind of like a little secret deal was made in the background. But anyway, that was just one type of medication, you know. I mean, yeah. But they do that sometimes. And it's odd. It stinks. It does. It really stinks. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely zero sense. Okay, now here they get into defending doctors who accept kickbacks and stuff like that. And they're saying, well, they'll be the first to say that doctors requested this stuff. Well, whether they were, even if they didn't request it, I'm not saying they did. I'm sure they didn't request it. That's a weird thing to request. My point is, it's like they still accepted it. Even though they didn't ask for it, they had the choice to not accept it. But they did. So yeah, they should be held accountable. Especially if it turns out to be something horrible for you, like speed being prescribed to children, which is the whole ADD, ADHD thing, which is worth a whole other video of itself. Like, there's a lot to this, guys. Like, I'm going to end this video with this. Well, we're almost done. But I really wanted to give you guys an example of how this doesn't just affect foster children, okay? It's very easy for these doctors, and not just doctors, teachers have done it for whatever reason, probably because they're trying to control their classroom. But it's very common for doctors and teachers to kind of like recommend that their children get medical help. You know what I mean? Because whether it be that they're not listening or that they're too hyper and they won't sit still, they always, go to that. Well, they might have, ADD. You might want to go take them to a doctor, okay? And to parents out there, I'm sure you know what I'm saying. You love your kids. You know what I mean? You want to help them. If their teacher is telling you that they're not doing well, you want to help. So, you'll take their advice and take them to a doctor, okay? And then the doctor will, be like, diagnose them with like, ADD or ADHD or what's that other one? Obsessive defiant disorder, or I don't know, like whatever, you name it. And then they'll be like, but luckily we've got a medication that helps with that. And then, the parent might question it. Like, I don't know if I want to put them on medicine. They're so young, they're children. I don't know if I want to commit to putting them on medicine every day because they're healthy, right? They're physically healthy. So that's the parents' reasoning, maybe. I don't know. The scam really comes in when they start saying stuff like, well, we have a way to help. Do you want to see your child struggle? I know you don't want your child to struggle and with things that are easy for other kids around them, do you? They'll say little things like that really, it's kind of evil. It really, and I don't even know if most doctors realize they're doing it. Maybe they truly believe this medicine will help these kids. I don't know. But to do that, to manipulate a parent's love for their child, you know what I mean? Like, it happens every day. You know what I mean? It's how most kids get medicated, in my opinion. I'm not saying that there's kids that shouldn't have medicine. That's not what I'm saying. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying, why is it that over 50% of kids need medicine? You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. But with those little, because they're going by a model, right? They're going by a model of what all kids should be like. And it's like usually one type of kid, one that sits there, listens, does their work, goes home, does their homework, period. End of story. Doesn't allow for any devious or variations of that. Like any deviance from that is considered a mental disorder, or it's considered a behavior disorder. You know what I mean? I don't have to lecture you all. We see it all the time. I'm just telling you how this is making people lots of money. It is. And then, okay, so then these children, the parents, let's say they do fall for it. Well, this is a hypothetical situation. Let's say they fall for it and it's easy to fall for it if you don't know much about it. Because if you don't know that those doctors are getting paid, if you don't know that, it is very easy to fall for it, because the doctor is there to advise you to do exactly that. So you're gonna take it at faith. That's one scenario. And then the kid gets on medication. Let's say another scenario, a parent who's really hesitant about this, right? I don't know if this is right. I want a second opinion. So they go to another doctor in a whole other place and get a second opinion. Now that doctor may either reinforce the first doctor's thing, or we've also seen it play out where that doctor will be like, oh no, that doctor's totally wrong. This is the problem. This is the medicine that you need to get. You see what I'm saying? So it's not right. And maybe that doctor in particular didn't get a kickback at all. But I'm saying it's a very good chance that their biomedical textbook author got a kickback. See what I'm saying? This is very deep layered. Maybe they both, maybe neither of them got a kickback. There are medicines that are life-saving. I'm not suggesting that. I'm talking about these made-up things. Things that used to be normal. It used to be normal for kids to have a lot of energy and want to run around and play. That used to be normal. They turned it into ADHD. And yeah, I'm sure it's hard. Look. I grew up, listen, they diagnosed me with ADHD my whole life. So it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, guys? So don't come at me like that. I'm just saying that, looking back, it's wasn't I supposed to be energetic and stuff? Yeah, it was harder for me to learn than other kids and to do things like that. But, at the end of the day, I wasn't any less intelligent at all. In fact, I'm very smart. I was just different. So, and this has become such a problem that these kids will grow up on these medicines, right? And then by the time they're an adult, and their whole body metabolism is all messed up and askew, because they literally lived their biggest development period on a medication. On most of those ADD medications are pure speed, pure amphetamine. Let's not mistake it, okay? So they'd grown up on that, so their body regulation, metabolism is all out of whack. It's all out of whack. And then suddenly they throw on you, well, if you want to stay on this medication, you got to go see a psychiatrist every single week, all the time, forever, if you want to stay on this medicine. Then bam, you're a huge asset all of a sudden. You're making someone a lot of money somewhere for just like one person. Then you multiply that by like millions. This has happened to millions of kids. Millions of kids. Not thousands, but millions. So, let's be clear. And we wonder why there's so many freaking issues. It's just like we got to start looking at root causes of problems, myself included. Like, things are complicated. Like, that's why when like issues pop up on, like, conflicts pop up on the world stage and stuff, it's always good to know about root causes to situations. And in this case, like with the medications of like children and things like that, it's all about money. Just follow the money and you will find it. And this is where I wanted to end this video. Now, back in 2005-ish, the OxyContin addiction issue was becoming serious. Like, people were starting to get really addicted and starting to, like, show up to hospitals and emergency rooms demanding, like, medicine and stuff like that. It became such a problem that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, assembled their team, and they decided to come up with a solution for this issue of OxyContin abuse. This was their solution, and it's still implemented to this day, 20-some years later. They decided it would be a good idea that they develop a database. Here, I'll read it from here. Purdue Pharma developed a database to identify OxyContin abusers throughout the nation, and also launch campaigns to educate patients through the internet. So, what this database does is that once you're put into that database, anytime you go to the hospital or something, any healthcare facility, and it's still in use, I don't know if it's the same one Purdue came up with, but they use something similar to this, where, like, if you're like flagged, like, for being a drug seeker, and then they can act accordingly. Like, there's stories on the internet of people, like, going to the hospital for things that aren't even, like, related to pain, and then doctors, like, approaching them with their drug-seeking background. Like, it's wild what this database has done. It has created a stigma for these people. If anyone is ever, even for a moment, like, a doctor could just have a bug up their butt about you and put you in this database. Seriously. I read another story where that happened, where it was like a doctor just had a personal issue or whatever, and they were put in this database, and they had never done a drug in their life. It's wild what this database has done. But, yeah. And I'm not arguing about the need for, like, a overall, like, medical database. I think that's very helpful and useful. I'm talking about this flag that they put in there. You know, it's just, that was their solution to a big problem they caused, was to target them while they kept pumping out this medicine to the ones who weren't abusing it all the time, while they were trying to get them to start abusing it. Like, this was like their whole thing. Like, they knew how addictive it was. This was why they got, like, hammered in court. Well, one of the reasons. But yeah, all the other companies were doing it. This was just the company that took the fall for it, was the sacrificial lamb, so they could keep doing what they were doing. That's it. Because, no one ever came after any of the other companies for modeling their sales pitches and stuff when they were doing, like, generic versions or whatever. Oh, yeah, that was a whole other thing that they did. When it came to the time for other companies to start making generic versions of it, and by this point, people were getting the addiction problem was already bad. they came up with this solution where it's like, well, only we can make it. No other company can make it. Yeah. Right? Like, they were, like, blatantly taking advantage of this. Like, even when they knew people were getting it, they were taking advantage of it. So, my intention is never, ever, ever to defend Purdue or the Sackler family. I'm simply saying there were so many other pharmaceutical companies who couldn't wait to do the same thing they were doing. As soon as that patent expired, they were on it too. And not only that, there's so many things. They even marketed it as less addictive than morphine. And they even pitched it to doctors that they could prescribe it for moderate pain. So they were literally prescribing it for toothaches and things like that. Things they did not need to prescribe it for. They were pushing it on the population, pretty much. And it was a whole big thing. It wasn't just Purdue. It was all of them. It was all of them. So then guess what happens? The problem becomes so bad. Then steps in the vultures, all the other vultures. Purdue tried to do this too. But they got busted. Came up with a solution by coming up with another medicine. Similar to methadone. Yeah, which is worth a whole other video that I'm not getting into. But yeah, so this is my opinion. And I might be attacked for this. I think this was a plan from the beginning. I think this was their plan from the beginning. And I think that this solution they did with this database, they knew damn well what they were doing. They knew that this was becoming a problem. Like, they were just treating it like it was just a certain few individuals the drug addicts. Like, they weren't innocent. Like, and most people who, you ask most people, I'm not saying all of them, but most people who end up becoming drug addicts started with these pills. I mean, seriously, it's a horrifying statistic. So, yeah, but that was and they knew this, but their solution was just to target the ones who, were a threat to their industry, basically, where the problem got so bad they were becoming a threat to them. That's my opinion. Because really, in my opinion, the logical solution would be to stop prescribing it if it's that addictive. They knew that was a logical solution, but they didn't. They knew how addictive it was. And their solution was just to come up with a database and keep prescribing as usual. So, yeah. And there's so much more to all this than what I've shared in this video. Oh my gosh. The research is like a mile long. It's long. I mean, honestly, I could be on here all day talking about this. This is like a huge problem for all kids. All kids. The ones in the foster system, the ones out of the foster system, all of them, all children. This is a problem. This is a huge problem. They are over-medicated. Horribly bad. They still are to this day. I mean, at the end of the day, why does a physically healthy child need medicine when it's a behavior or cognitive? Like, that's a horrible thing to do, and we've all been so brainwashed, and so many kids had to grow up high. So many kids had to grow up high. You wonder why there's such a strong correlation between people diagnosed with ADHD and ADD and drug addiction. Maybe because they grew up their whole lives on narcotics. I don't know, you tell me. They're just going to blame the addict always, like they always do, and still keep doing what they're doing. Come up with a solution at some point for this problem. Make more money on it. Get off scot-free. So, I encourage everybody. I hope everybody learns some of this stuff and starts their own, YouTube channel or social media channel, I encourage everyone to do that, because really the more people who talk about this, the more likely a change is going to happen. Like, there needs to be more than just me. And I mean, well, I know there's more. I'm just saying it would help. We need more and more people talking about this. That's all I want to say. We just need more people talking about it. Thank you to those of you who do. Thank you to those of you who consistently fight for the kids and not for just mind candy. What I mean by that is mind candy, like just basic entertainment on YouTube. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here to actually help people. I hope I'm helping. If I'm not, please let me know in the comments. I take any feedback. Any feedback, as long as you're not being a bully. I take any kind of feedback. You know, honestly, you can say whatever you want about me. I mean, don't be a bully to other people who come in the comments. I don't like that. I'll block you quick if you're mean to someone else in the comment section. Feel free to disagree all day long, but no name calling. You know what I mean? Just common sense, guys. Just keep it respectful. But yeah, not when it comes to me. Say whatever you want to me. I can take it. You see, when we start actually, I'm going to leave this with this one wise words. I'm going to get off my soapbox. When we start admitting we're wrong, I mean, until we can all admit we're wrong, until people can start admitting they're wrong, they can't grow and evolve. That's, being wrong and failing have been ostracized. They're good things. They're learning. It's not failing, it's learning. What did Thomas Edison say? As much as I don't like him, he did say something that was pretty wise. I like Tesla better, but you know. But Thomas Edison did say something very wise. He said, I didn't fail 99 times to make a light bulb. I learned 99 different ways not to make a light bulb. It wasn't failure, it was learning. It's learning experiences. So, okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Oh my gosh, this might be my longest video ever. I'm going to go. Thanks for listening.